Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another amazing episode of the Stephen Gervais and Friends podcast. I know it's Thursday, and I know I said that, I would be only doing recorded stuff on Tuesdays and live streams on Saturdays, but today I kind of wanted to do something a little bit different. That being, I wanted to bring another great episode of the podcast to you, the fans. And today we will be talking about the 1968 film Bullitt, which starred Steve McQueen, Jacqueline Bisset, Don Gordon, Robert Duvall, Simon Oakland, and Norman Fell. The movie, which was one of Steve McQueen's probably okayer films, he is the scene stealer. Don't get that twisted. But the story of the movie wasn't as good as what it could have been. The car chase is what pretty much saves the movie, in my opinion. But before we get into that, I want to say, hey, are you looking for new podcasts? Go check out the Nonsensical Nonsense podcast on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and I do believe they have a Twitter. I was a guest on their show last Saturday, and it was a heck of a good time. Also, if you're looking for a show that talks shit, go check out Talkin' Shit on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and I do believe they also have a Twitter. Go check if you want to deal with something with more films and pop culture. You can watch this show, or you can watch Flet's Movies and Pop Culture 13, which is also on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. So let's get into it today. Bullitt. It's a 1968 American neo-noir action thriller film directed by Peter Yates and produced by Philip D'Antoni. The picture stars Steve McQueen, Robert Vaughn, Jacqueline Bisset, Don Gordon, Robert Duvall, Simon Oakland, and Norman Fell. The screenplay by Alan R. Trustman and Harry Kleiner was based on the 1963 novel Mute Witness by Robert L. Fish, writing under the pseudonym Robert L. Pike. Lalo Schifrin wrote the original jazz-inspired score. The film was made by McQueen's Solar Productions Company with his partner Robert Relia as the executive producer, released by Warner Brothers 7 Arts on October 17, 1968. The film was a critical and box office success, later winning the Academy Award for Best Film Editing and receiving a nomination for Best Sound. Writers Trustman and Kleiner won a 1969 Edgar Award from the Mystery Writers of America for Best Motion Picture Screenplay. Bullitt is famous for its car chase scene through the streets of San Francisco, which is regarded as one of the most influential in film history. In 2007, Bullitt was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as culturally, historically, or significant. And pretty much the whole plot of Bullitt is that a mobster by the name of Johnny Ross has pretty much stole from the mob. He flees to San Francisco under the witness protection of Mr. Chalmers. Well, Mr. Chalmers hears about a guy named Frank Bullitt, Lieutenant Frank Bullitt, and decides that, hey, maybe I can get Frank Bullitt to watch this witness, and politically it'll make me look good, but also it'd be able to help out San Francisco Police Department and whatnot. And so he gives the lowdown to Bullitt about what's going to happen and how he's going to try and keep his key witness alive until they get to until Johnny Ross can, testify against organized crime. Well, that's all nice and well, but when Frank goes home and has another person relieve him, he gets a phone call later in the night from one of his fellow policemen saying that, hey, Chalmers is, says he's coming up and whatnot. And Bullitt's like, well, not at this time in the morning. Why would he want to be doing that? And Johnny Ross magically walks by the other policeman and takes the bolt off the door. Well, in comes these hitmen who shoot the cop in the leg, knock him out, and then they shoot Johnny Ross and pretty much kill him. And when Bullitt gets there, the ambulance is there. They've already taken Ross to the hospital. They're taking the policeman to the hospital, and Bullitt in the ambulance decides to ask him, hey, what happened? And the policeman tells him that, Ross unlocked the door. They kicked in the door, shot the policeman first, then shot and killed Mr. Ross. Well, Frank kind of figures that, something's fishy, where we later find out that Johnny Ross is dead. Died after probably getting shot. The policeman survives, but he might lose his leg. And Chalmers personally takes it out on Bullitt, on Lieutenant Frank Bullitt, saying, I gave you a job to do and you failed, pretty much. Because this means the failure of Chalmers in a way, that he's probably going to be made a laughingstock. He's going to be made a fool. And Frank Bullitt, in the only way he can, pretty much tells him, this is my area. I'll handle the investigation. I'll get it done, but get off my back. And so Frank later goes and tries and retraces Johnny Ross's steps to figure out what's all going on. Well, eventually he goes back to his Ford Mustang and he sees the assassins, who are in a 68, I do believe, Dodge Charger. And he drives away. He already knows they're tailing him. And so he loses them. Well, then they're driving around going like, well, where did he go? And eventually the driver or second assassin of the Charger looks back and sees he's there. So when they eventually do stop, the car chase ensues. It's an amazing car chase. I mean, that's what, in my opinion, really saves the movie, because the movie isn't, I shouldn't say it isn't good. It's a very good movie, but it's definitely a product of the 60s, and it would definitely usher in Gone in 60 Seconds, Vanishing Point, French Connection, all these movies that had a very good car chase, but little story or character development. And Lieutenant Frank Bullitt later runs the Charger off the road after a lengthy chase, and the assassins die. Well, Frank Bullitt loses his Mustang, which makes me sad to this day. And later they're figuring out that Johnny Ross, or the guy who claimed to be Johnny Ross, isn't really who he says he is. And Bullitt later gets a ride from, well, Bullitt pretty much puts Johnny Ross under a John Doe, so that Chalmers will still think that he's there. Well, Chalmers finds out that he's not there, He's been taken away or misappropriated with the file, as they say. And he stops Captain Bennett outside the family church and serves him with a writ of habeas corpus for Ross. Bennett later confronts Bullitt and Delgetti in the presence of San Francisco Police Department Captain Baker, who wants Chalmers' support for the department. Bullitt reveals that Ross died, and Bennett decides to wait until Monday and allows Bullitt and Delgetti to investigate the long-distance phone call to San Mateo. Bullitt gets a ride from his girlfriend, Kathy, where at the hotel, Bullitt finds a woman pretty much strangled to death. And Kathy, who had followed him in there, is horrified by the scene. And on the way back to San Francisco, she pretty much confronts Bullitt about his work, saying, "Frank, you live in a sewer," and wondering what will happen to us. While investigating the victim's luggage, they discover someone named Albert and Dorothy Rennick, and Bullitt requests their passport applications from Chicago. While Bullitt, Captain Bennett, Chalmers, and Captain Baker gather in the office with the telecopier as Albert Rennick's application arrives. "You sent us to guard the wrong man," Bullitt ends up telling Chalmers. And Ross used Rennick, who was a used car salesman from Chicago, to elude both the mob and Chalmers. Bullitt realized that Ross must be escaping the country that night using the flight booked for Rennick. And they later, Bullitt and Delgetti later go to the San Francisco International Airport and watch the Rome Gate, where where the real Johnny Ross is supposed to leave. Well, Johnny Ross has, now using Rennick's passport, switched the flights to London, and the plane that he's on is ordered back to the terminal, where Chalmers suggests to Bullitt that, hey, we can exploit this to benefit both of them, and Bullitt pretty much says, "I don't want any part of it," and says bullshit. Well, Bullitt later boards the plane as passengers are exiting out, since they had to turn around, and Ross escapes through the rear cabin door and flees across the runway. And when they're both at the exit, Ross kills a deputy sheriff and is later shot and killed by Bullitt. And Chalmers drives away in his limousine, and on the bumper it says, "Support your local police." And then earlier Monday morning, Bullitt comes home to find Kathy asleep in his bed. She has chosen to stay. He then looks into the bathroom mirror for everything that happened. And that's the end of the movie. As I said, Steve McQueen is Frank Bullitt. Don Gordon is Detective Bell, or Delgetti. Robert Vaughn is Walter Chalmers. Simon Oakledge as Captain Oakland as Captain Sam Bennett. Felice Orlandi as Albert Johnny Ross Rennick. Pat Rinella as Johnny Ross. Jacqueline Bissett as Kathy. Carl Rendell as Carl Stanton. Paul Genji as Mike the Hitman. Bill Hickman as Phil, the Hitman's partner. Robert Duvall as Weinsberg, the cab driver. Norman Fell as Captain Baker. George Stanford Brown as Dr. Willard. Justin Tarr as Eddie the Informant. Al Checo as desk clerk. Victor Tabak as Pete Ross. Robert Lipton as Chalmers' first aide. Ed Peck as Westcott, reporter at hospital. And John Apera as killer. And so it's kind of funny um, how, they kind of made this movie. And of course, Steve McQueen based the character of Frank Bullitt on San Francisco Inspector Dave Toschi, who, as we remember in the Zodiac review that I did, he was the lead investigator on one, or he was one of the lead San Francisco investigators of the Zodiac killer murders, um, that would begin shortly after the release of Bullitt. And in the film Zodiac, Paul Avery, played by Robert Downey Jr., mentions to Robert Graysmith, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, that McQueen got the idea for the holster from Toschi. And Catherine Ross was offered the role of Kathy, but turned it down as she felt that the part was just too small. Um, there was so many cool things in this movie. The car chase being the greatest part of the movie, and also you had, the airport scene, that chase where he's running to catch the real Johnny Ross, and just the aesthetics and San Francisco in general, the beauty of it was on display fully. Although the movie, I some people claim it didn't do really well. Um, as I've said earlier in this, it kind of the story kind of drags. But once that car chase hits, and then you find out that Chalmers and San Francisco Police Department were set up by the real Johnny Ross, it pretty much gets better. So this movie, if you haven't seen it, is a very great movie to go see. If you love car chases, here you go. They are making a sequel, I guess. I don't know if it's a legacy sequel, since Steve McQueen passed away in 1980 due to lung cancer. But evidently Bradley Cooper is supposed to be Frank Bullitt, which, to me, if you're going to make a legacy sequel, why wouldn't you get Steve McQueen's son, Chad McQueen, to be Bullitt? Because he looks exactly, almost identical to his dad in a way. But that's my opinion. Or, leave it alone. But, 'tis the season for remakes. Next year we're getting the Crow remake with Bill Skarsgård, which I'm kind of interested in, seeing as how the original Crow film was plagued by Brandon Lee's accidental death on the film. So hopefully the Crow remake turns out really good, and hopefully this Bullitt remake or legacy sequel turns out really good whenever that comes out, if it does. But yeah, that is my review of the movie Bullitt. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. This Saturday I won't be doing a live stream since I will be at my mom's wedding that day. So Tuesday I'll be back, and I will be talking about either Gone in 60 Seconds, if I haven't done it already, or The French Connection. Thank you all so very much. Thank you all for supporting the channel. Also, if you'd like to know what we're doing, you can go on the Facebook group, which is Stephen Gervais and Friends Podcast. You can go on Instagram. You can go on TikTok. Or you can see it on Zencaster. Or even go on the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/ and then the @ Stephen Gervais and Friends Podcast. All the links will be down in the description. And also, like I said earlier, if you want to see different podcasts kind of like ours, go check out the Nonsensical Nonsense Podcast. Links will also be down in the description for them. Go check out Talking Shit. Links will be down in the description for their channels. Flet's Films, or Movies and Pop Culture 13. I'll also put the links down in the description for all those channels. Thank you so very much. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I will be working on a new trailer / intro. I don't know when it's going to be coming out. And also I'm going to be doing some merchandise pretty soon here. I'm looking at making hats and maybe a coffee mug or t-shirt to start off with. I'm going to start off with hats first. So thank you so very much. I hopefully you enjoyed this. Thank you to the 77 subscribers on YouTube and to the other subscribers that I have that listen to me just basically on anywhere where they listen to this podcast on. Couldn't have done it without you all. And I will see you all on next Tuesday. Thank you so very much. I will talk to you all next time.